Hey guys, so this week I've been playing Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, a lot of these Call of Duty games get a bad rep for being the same all the time and not innovating enough, but this game, oh my god, it introduces so many new features like gun and explosions and story. Oh, and the environments you play in, like brand new ones you've never seen in Call of Duty, like forest and snow. Oh, and the bad guy. I don't want to give too much away, but the most evil, maniacal bad guy in any Call of Duty game. Guy with a bandana on his head. Oh, you're going to be talking about him for years. So, I mean, you probably don't have to watch the rest of the review, but if you're gonna, anyways, here's my opinion. Call of Duty Ghosts is the story of 1.5 brothers who just want to grow up to make their dad proud of them with all of their murdering. But then one day, nondescript bad guys take over America's space gun and shoot America with it. Now here we are 15 years later, inexplicably, and America is under siege from all the bad guys who want to shoot them. Also, there's this guy in a bandana who hates America now because those nondescript bad guys almost killed him one time. Okay, while I'm being a little facetious, the story of Call of Duty Ghosts doesn't get much more fleshed out than that. There's this faction called the Federation that hates America for some reason, maybe our freedoms, I don't know, they never say. And the main bad guy, Rourke, who's really just a cheap ripoff of Bane from Dark Knight Rises, fights for them because reasons? The story is stupid even by Call of Duty standards, but the story was never my favorite aspect of these games. What I always loved was the new and interesting environments that the game had you fighting in, and sadly this game misses a lot of opportunities in that department. The setting of the game takes place in an America crippled by these space weapons and at constant war and under siege from all sides from different factions, and that sounds awesome. There's this weird post-apocalyptic feel to it, but none of that's ever really fully realized in the game. And what few missions that you play that take place in America feel pretty generic for the most part. It's like a football stadium. Okay. The rest of the game takes place in an assortment of random environments that you would expect from Call of Duty games. You know, forest, snow, mountain. The only two exceptions are the underwater and space missions, which are kind of interesting to begin with until you realize they play exactly the same, and they really overstay their welcome. Oh, and try not to think too hard about how guns work in the vacuum of space, because you'll get an aneurysm. Speaking of weapons, there's another kind of bland aspect of the game. While the game is technically set in the future, it's not as far into the future as Black Ops 2, so it's missing that cool, future tech feel of the last game. Everything in there is, somewhat plausible or already exists and has been in other games, so it lacks those bells and whistles that the last game had. The one big feature that the developers have been talking about since the early days of this game is the fact that in the single-player campaign, you get to fight alongside a dog. It initially seems like a really cool idea to have this dog running around protecting you and able to sneak through enemies and stuff, but it has very little effect on the fundamentals of the game, and the dog is literally only in there for 2 missions. And at one point in the game, the dog stops being useful and becomes an active burden to you, where you have to carry him around in the middle of a gunfight, dropping him every couple of feet to shoot bad guys, then pick him up, and then drop him. Besides the single player, there's obviously multiplayer, because it's a Call of Duty game, and it's got your standard deathmatch, capture the flag kind of stuff that you would expect. And you spend hours and hours leveling up your character and unlocking new weapons to your heart's content. One of the new gameplay modes is Squads, which is, from what I can discern from playing it, is just multiplayer with bots. You can either play a traditional match against bots, or have your friends versus bots, or do like your bots versus another person's bots. And there's also this multiplayer horde mode, kind of like the zombie mode, but called Extinction, where you have to fight these weird bipedal aliens, which is, whatever. So if you couldn't tell from that entire review, this game is incredibly underwhelming, which is disappointing because the last few Call of Duty games have been really steady. The Modern Warfares I loved, the Black Ops 1 was great, was pretty good in what they tried. Black Ops 2 was amazing, I loved Black Ops 2, and this one is just very phoned in. I mean, you can tell that this kind of feels like it's coming from a studio that's been gutted over the past few years, and a lot of the really talented creative force has left, and that's why like 4 different studios have been working on this, so it feels like a patchwork of things. It doesn't really mesh well. There's a lot of really interesting moments that you're like, oh, is it going to do this? And then it doesn't. Like the part where you're like scaling the building downwards, you think, oh, is this going to be a moment where I'm like shooting like regular, only I'm going down a build? No? Okay, so that would have been cool to put, never mind then, I guess. So, single player underwhelming, multiplayer very underwhelming. They've added the aliens mode, which is just zombie mode, but not very good. So it's just, ugh. I didn't really enjoy this game. I didn't hate it, but it didn't grab me at all. It's, go play Black Ops 2 if you haven't, and wait for the next one, and hopefully that one will be better.
You're listening to Franklin and the Beast here on Hot Rock 97. We're looking for the fifth caller for a chance to like and favorite this video and share it with all their friends on Facebook.